Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Activities for People Living at Home with Dementia. We are proud to offer this series with funding from the Area Agency on Aging and the United Way of Tarrant County. Some of these programs are recorded and some of these are made available for viewing through a YouTube channel for future use. I'm betting that today's is going to be one of those that is sent over for copy. I'm Martha Brown, your host for today's activities. We are presenting today Peggy Spear with the Amon Carter Museum of American Art. In their collection, we have artwork by Kenji Akagawa, and Peggy is going to give us a tour of that artist. Peggy, it's all yours.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yesterday, I had a Zoom with Barbara, our friend from Padua, Italy.
Oh, yeah.
And she said that she hung out with you guys a little longer after I jumped off the Zoom session last time. And she said she really enjoyed talking with you. So we decided on a session in July. She and I are going to tag team a topic. We're going to do the topic of fruit, and she will be talking about artworks, medieval artworks from her collection in Padua. And we'll talk about a couple of artworks here from the Amon Carter. So Barbara will be back later this summer.
Oh, fun.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So keeping to the topic at hand, today we're going to talk about the artist Kenji Akagawa. We currently have an exhibition up right now focusing on Kenji as an artist, but also as a printer. And we talked, maybe Steve, you asked a couple weeks ago, or someone asked a couple weeks ago about, do we list the printer's name when we're listing the artist's name? Typically we do. In this exhibition, we are looking at the focus of the importance of the printer. While he was making his own art, he was also just as important as the artists that he was collaborating with in the printing processes, because he was experimenting with new processes that helped create new aesthetics, new processes, things like that. So we're going to see both sides of the art creating and the art printing. So here's a picture of Kenji himself. He was born in 1940 in Tokyo, Japan. And with the upheaval of World War II, his family fled to northern Japan. After the war, they moved back down to Tokyo. He went to a design school in Tokyo. And then afterwards, he moved to the United States and he went to a couple of different art schools in the US. In 1965, he was invited to the Tamarin workshop, the one that's in LA, where they print with lithographs. So he was invited to come as a printer. It was supposed to be a 3-month stint, but what is her name? June Wayne, the woman who created the workshop, loved him so much that he ended up staying for a whole year, which was not typical for the printers at that time. He was just so enthusiastic about the process. He said art making is life making, and he really felt invigorated in this type of what he called a democratic process of the printer and the artist working together. So that's a little bit background about him. And then after he left the Tamarin workshop, he decided he wanted to move to the United States and become a resident. So he then moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota, and taught at an art school there, and just retired in 2009. And when he was working in Minneapolis, he was creating a lot of sculpture that were like public sculpture that were interventions in environmental spaces. So benches, thinking things like benches or sculpture pieces where people could sit around and actually engage in a conversation. He wanted the art to encourage collaboration. He was very interested in this idea of collaboration, whether it were creative conversations or just you and your companion sitting and talking. He wanted there to be these very physical conversations that were happening with people, not just people with the art. So we are only looking at his works on paper, or the works he helped print. So here's our first one. We've got some color. We've got some color today, not a ton, but we've got some.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what do we see here?
Wow.
Loud?
Wow. Yeah. I
Oh,
mean,
wow. I thought you said loud. I'm like, okay, so this is kind of yelling at you. What is making you say wow, Don? What stands
well,
out to you?
it's a nice contrast with dark white and yellow, and
Yeah.
it's got some pretty distinct shapes in several of the blocks, but
Mhm.
they don't really relate to each other very well. So,
Does it feel disjointed to you, or does it come together nicely, even though they feel very different?
I think it comes together really nicely.
You think so? What do other people think about this?
I don't think so. I think
It feels kind of jarring.
yeah, each little thing is its own. They don't go with each other, I find.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of blocks that he put together.
Yeah, it has like a very collaged feeling.
Mhm.
So here, this is a different artist, and that created the composition, and then he worked with the artist to figure out what the printing process would be. When they were at Tamarind, the printing process was documented every step along the way to allow things to be replicated in the future, or just to understand how things were experimented, to see if these experiments would happen later down the road. So here he's working with the artist, and they decided to do something they hadn't done, which was they're using two different ink types, which were dramatically different in creating two different effects. So that's part of that disjointedness that Yetta was pointing out is, and Don, that there are two different inks that are not typically used together that he's using. And so, you can see some feels a little splotchy, whereas others feel a little more uniform. That's a result of the ink process that they're using. And so Kenji Akagawa has said it, and kind of flippantly, but funnily, we don't know what the hell we're doing here, but let's give it a shot. So I mean, that's like so true in so many things in life, but he welcomed that, the unknown, and often loved what the unknown then created. So while this might not have been, the most beautiful print that he had worked on, according to some people, he was in love with the fact that he was able to try two new things and create an effect that they didn't know what that was going to look like until it actually printed. So that was kind of the driving force with a lot of what Kenji was doing is, hey, to the artist, if you're cool with it, let's try something kind of funky and see what happens next. We looked at one of Kenji's prints last week with Ruth Asawa, the portrait of her daughter, or maybe a couple weeks ago, the portrait of her daughter in profile that looked kind of ghosty and eerie.
Okay.
That was Kenji working with Ruth Asawa, and Ruth was the one that would make the meals for everybody. They were trying a new technique there that came with that kind of ghosty effect because they were using different acetone washes on top of what the ink was. So again, the artist and the printer were working in lockstep to create something new.
So Peggy, when you say two ink sets, is that black and yellow? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, black and yellow. It's what I think that is, black and yellow, but two different types of ink. So kind of like there are different types of lithographic stone. Some might be plastic, some might be, actual stone. Their ink, the touches can be different as well, different makes, different composition. So that also creates a different effect.
Okay.
So I think the actual ink itself, despite the color, was different itself with in the consistency.
Peggy, I must tell you that the piece in the middle looks like I was turned loose with some round-ended scissors at age 4.
It has that effect, and it could have, it's funny because it feels like almost a paper soda, like when you're making the paper snowflakes.
Exactly.
Because they're pretty symmetrical. So it does have that papered effect, which I'm not sure how they created that on the lithographic stone.
Well, I was going to ask about that because I don't know how lithographs well, I do know from what you told me how lift works, but this yellow square on the bottom,
Mhm.
it's got the kind of cellular part,
Yeah.
and then the black part in this middle one. In watercolor painting, you use something like salt to create that effect. So
Mhm.
I don't know if they use something like that for
I
lithograph.
don't know specifically with this one, but in other artworks we're going to look at, he was going in and using razor blades and styluses. And so they are using different tools to create different textures. I don't know specifically what they used in this, but that is very possible that those things were being used to create new effects. And even down here, the almost the repetition of the dots reminds me of what's that stuff in like packaging that you would like
bubble wrap.
Yeah, bubble wrap. Like it kind of feels like that experimenting of texture. So here's Ruth Asawa, and it's another black and white. But Ruth Asawa, I just mentioned, worked very closely with Kinji Akagawa. And again, we talked about how close she was, where she would make dinner for all of her printers because she loved how much her printers were influencing and creating work with her. So she had a very close relationship with Kinji. Here, this one is called Plain Trees. And of course, it's not, it's so hard to reproduce some of these artworks digitally because a lot of detail is often lost. So the detail I'm about to explain, you can't really see, but when they were getting the stone ready and putting the washes and touche inks on it, there were two lines that appeared. One of them was pretty curved and one of them was pretty straight that you can see when you see the actual artwork, because they discovered that whatever was on the matrix that was on the lithographic stone before had not been completely cleaned off.
Oh.
So it was kind of this happy accident that they stumbled across, and they didn't know it until they started cleaning and printed it, that these two lines appeared as kind of like the leftover of a past artwork. Ruth loved that happy find and decided to print the series then with those two lines as if it were part of the original composition, which it wasn't. And so she said, or that they were they proofs, the reason that they went back in when they were first printing the proofs, and proofs are the kind of the practice print before they decide where this is the tonality we want. The proofs were too dark. And so that's when they went back in with removing with a solvent to remove some of the darkness of the ink. And that's when they found it. So it wasn't even until they were really getting into the printing process that they discovered this mistake, so to speak. But I really like this artwork. I think it's very happy. Do other people, even though it's black and white, there's something very soothing about it.
I find it peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of a Rorschach test, a psychological test.
Oh, the Rorschach, yeah.
Yeah, Rorschach, that you have to see what you can see in that.
It looks to me as if somebody put just blotches of paint on it and then folded the paper and opened it up.
Called it art. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not my favorite, Peggy, but I'm sure you knew that.
I was your game. Yeah, she really liked doing natural occurrences, things that are organic, things that appeared in nature were something that were very interesting to her. She was a very well-known sculptor. So we did see she did a portrait of all of her children, but then she was also doing some of this natural, more organic formed type of stuff. So this is another example of her inspired by nature, but then inspired by the printing technique itself.
Well,
all right.
Having an accidental effect on your painting is something I do all the time. So I do something, then I try to wipe it off, and then I paint over it, and it leaves something I like. So.
Yeah, and not every artist is open-minded like that. So good on you for having that flexibility. So here's something that now we only see Kenji Akagawa's name. This is something he created and something he printed himself. So he's both the artist and the printer in this particular print. What's the vibe? What are we thinking?
Wow.
A lot of black.
A lot of black.
I wonder
Well,
what the white dot was all about.
Here.
Yes.
Well, experimental.
Oh,
Experimental.
Different solvents.
It looks like the moon landing to me.
Yeah.
That's what I was
Okay.
thinking the same, like something from the moon.
Very
white,
cool.
white dot is either a star or a little planet in the distance.
Okay, I like this solar landscape.
Yeah.
I hate to tell y'all are wrong, but beauty is in the eye of the beholder, or whatever you're seeing is, what you're seeing. This is totally abstract, so it really is kind of meant for interpretation. But he created this series, Black Rainbow 1 through, I believe it was 1 through 6. And while he was in the Tamarind workshop, he loved the democratic, collaborative energy that was happening between all of the, it was never one artist working alone. They were relying on other people to end up creating this beautiful final product. And people were receptive to trusting the other on what their expertise was and what their creative vision was. So there was a really nice democratic collaborative environment happening in studio. Outside of studio in LA, this was in the 1960s, was a lot of civil unrest. There was a lot of riots and rebellion happening as a result of police brutality. So there seemed to be a complete discord in what democratic operation looked like in the city at large. And it really very deeply upset Kenji. So he created this series as an emotional response to what was happening. And it's not overt. It's not at all political. I mean, you guys went celestial with it. And he was not trying to represent anything in particular related to the rebellion, but more kind of the unrest and unease that was created as a civic change was happening, or civic inequity was happening. So here he's using acetone. You can see that's a powerful solvent that was removing ink. He applied the lithographic crayon and ink to the entire stone. So he colored it all in black and then went back with these solvents to kind of paint the stone that way to create these different effects. So some of these dots you might be seeing is when he had dipped something in the solvent and then was pulling it over to then paint or move his strokes. And then it just kind of fell from the brush, because these are such perfect droplets.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That it's almost too perfect to do freehand. So there's that. You can see a little bit of the artist's hand, which is really, really cool with the moving of what he's using. And so he liked the way that the solvent and the acetone would create these almost ghostly types of effects. You can really see it kind of down here. Do you feel, I mean, you guys were explaining something that actually felt pretty calm, just kind of lunar landscape type of feel. Do you feel a calmness, or do you feel like a uneasiness looking at it?
I still think it's something that looks like it's outer space, I think, it's abstract outer space, I guess. All these white blobs,
Cratery. That does give a very crater effect.
Yeah.
And Don, this is one of the instances where he was using a razor blade to go back.
Oh, okay. I see that. Yeah. The other thing I see with this kind of these circles, like they are there, kind of they seem like kind of unfocused. Is it the way I've done some painting that shows pictures of things in the rain, lights in the rain.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
the ones that are far away are always unfocused.
And kind of have that Orby effect to it.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's it. He liked that nebulous effect that the acetone and solvent would create. So that's something he experimented with different artists and with himself. And so while this is one of 6 within that same series, a lot of them have that same type of effect. All right, so we will leave Black Rainbow 2
okay,
to another. There is one more color, I believe.
okay.
So don't lose faith yet. This is the last black and white one. Called, and it's not called Rainbow Talk. It's called Play the Piano. I forgot to change it.
Oh,
What is it called?
Play the Piano.
Play the piano. Okay.
So yeah, I know.
Oh,
I was
down
like,
there.
so have any of you heard of the French film Shoot the Piano Player?
I'd like to see it now.
It's a 1960s film, so it didn't come out long before he made this. It's a French, what was it, new wave crime drama. So kind of, it sounds like a very niche group of people might have enjoyed it. Anyway, the Play the Piano, he was referencing that movie because in the piano, or in that movie, there's a line like, "Don't shoot the piano player, he's doing the best he can."
Yeah, I've heard that before.
And yeah, and so it's essentially leading the making the point, like, even if it's not good music, it's still music.
That's
So maybe, let's just enjoy it because we have it, even though it's not the best.
Okay.
So it's kind of a tongue in cheek, if he's referencing that type of like, hey, you might not be a printer, so I'm the best you got kind of thing. But he was really good at what he did. But then he was also equating the creation or the learning of a piano or an instrument to the learning of printmaking. And he, in this particular image, it's kind of like a composite of all of the skills he amassed during his time at the Tamarind studio, where he's showcasing different techniques, printing techniques that he's capable of doing. So that it does feel very disjointed, but it almost feels, it's like the best of, like, do you like this effect? Because I can do that. Do you like this effect? Because I can do that. So it's almost like his business card of printing.
Yeah.
I see at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 musicians in there.
I was going to say something about that too, Bill.
Maybe more than that.
Yeah.
I see 2 only. I don't know where you get all the
I
other.
see one, which looks like an
Yeah.
upright piano.
Right. The
Yeah.
guy standing up next to him.
And then that one, yes.
Yeah.
Down here.
But then if you look at the top, you kind of see almost, they're kind of faded images. They're not distinct. But down in the bottom left, or that looks like a picture frame, it looks like a Blues Brother.
Okay.
Down here.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it could be
I'm
singers.
having a squint to see that one, Steve, but I trust you.
Right, the guy with the hat. It's got a hat.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It looks like a Blues Brother. Okay.
Okay.
If you go to the section to the right, it looks like there's kind of 2 people there, one with a long dark hair,
Oh, okay.
and then another behind it.
Yep.
And then down at the very bottom to the very left, it's kind of like a shadow. And then the 2 dark spots, it'll look like people sitting watching.
That's why. I
Yeah,
think
that's
too.
what I thought.
So my
Cool.
interpretation is a little bit different, Steve. Is that
Let's see
I think
that.
the top is the
Careful where you
front
touch.
door or some window looking in,
That one.
and then there's the player, then there's the people watching it,
On there.
and
The
so
door.
it kind of lays out like that to me.
Okay.
That's what he sees.
Yeah, and I'm seeing, these are almost like stage lights
Yes.
on the piano player, and that might be like the stage or curtains are opening behind
Okay.
him, and then the audience.
Yeah.
So this is, I don't know exactly what everything is, but the title helps us, again, not Rainbow Talk, it's Play the Piano. it helps us to give us a little context about what we're looking at.
Yeah, I like it. I like this one.
Yeah, and after talking about it, I think I like it a little more. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, and then our next and last one, a bright color. There's not really much written about this particular artwork at all, but it's called Somebody's Rainbow. He was very interested in different rainbows, or this idea of a rainbow. I think, again, this idea of unity, of things working together to create a larger, beautiful total. But this was one he designed or composed and then printed himself.
Mm.
Do you see anything that kind of alludes to a rainbow?
Well, the two lines, the orange and the black line, are the horizontal, kind of
Yeah.
parallels. But then you've got the sunshine kind of blank, because you sometimes see sunshine coming through the rainbows.
Mhm.
Always with the same color distribution.
The same colors, the yellows and the browns and the oranges.
That cannot be a rainbow color.
You're right.
That's
It's
true.
not what you
That is
think of
true.
when you think of a rainbow. But it's somebody's rainbow,
Yes.
right? Someone's rainbow is what he calls it. So someone might be seeing this color rainbow. We're not, but someone is.
Well, because of the visual perspective,
Yeah.
Or
could
color
be
blindness.
color blindness, could be something else, that's what they see.
So here we can see again, he's using different effects with the crayon. He lightens it. We've got different shapes. He's trying with shading. He's working with different thicknesses. So here, while it's an image, we can kind of see his hand experimenting with different types of
Yeah.
movement.
Yeah.
So that's it for Kinji today. This exhibition will be on view, I want to say, through the end of the summer. So if you are in our neck of the woods, pop by. There really are some beautiful artworks. They're all between like 13 and 18, 19 and 25. They're all pretty big, so you can see a lot of the artist's hand, which is always really cool.
Okay.
And then next week, I promise you we have color, because we're looking at the topic hot dogs and hamburgers. So Margaret, I have to send you,
The Memorial
and
Day.
it's very literal. There's very few abstractions, if I remember correctly. So we're back in the real world with that.
Oh,
Martha, I have to send you the list of topics, so I'll get that to you either today or tomorrow. But
Right.
next week it's hot dogs and hamburgers.
Great.
I
Thank
love it.
you. Thank
Yeah, so
you.
enjoy. I hope you enjoy your hot dogs and hamburgers this weekend. It's Memorial Day weekend. So
Yep.
have a nice holiday weekend, and I will see y'all next week.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank
Peggy.
you.
Thank
Bye,
Thank
friends.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Miss Peggy. Oh, my goodness. She always makes us think, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's take a look at what's coming up, and then we will go to Fifth Street Cafe. Uh-oh.
Ruh-roh.
Ruh-roh. Do you see what I see?
Yes.
Well- You see.
Purple.
Yeah, what do you see?
Kenji Akagawa in purple.
Yep, that's right.
Yes.
Okay, good. Whew, I'm so glad. Okay, at 11:30, we're going to finish early, so I can tune into Buddy Bray. I want to hear him on his piano.
Yeah.
If Chris and Ashanti, if you haven't heard Buddy Bray, you want to come back into the other link so you can listen to this. He's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then at 1:30, drum roll, Nia moving to heel with Emily. In case the darkness of the day has got you down a little bit, we can project some. And then tomorrow, drum roll, Thursday.
It's you bingo.
Yes, Thursday bingo all day long.
Yeah.
Yes. And that will be the end of the month for the Thursday group for bingo.
All right.
Yes. Yay.
Well, are you gonna be
What?
there on Monday, Memorial Day?
I
Okay.
will be. Yes, ma'am.